Another myth is that you could play as Rebecca Chambers, a character introduced in the original Resident Evil, in Resident Evil 2. If you go to Albert Wesker's desk and open it 50 times in a row, you will discover a photo of Rebecca in a basketball uniform. It's unclear why Wesker would hold on to something like that. But when you reach a certain point in the Shiverburn Galaxy and look it up in first-person mode, you can see 3 figures on the edge of the map. The game never acknowledges them, but a curious fan actually searched the game files and discovered that the sky pattern for the area is called Beyond Hell Valley, which is strange considering that the level isn't called that. Even stranger, these mysterious figures are called Hell Valley Sky Tree. But the figures don't look like trees. Maybe that should make Lev. In many FPS games, the pistol is the first weapon you start with, and the first weapon you drop when you need to free up your inventory for new weapons. The one major exception to this rule is, of course, Halo's M60 personal defense pistol. Not only does the pistol have pinpoint accuracy, but it's also incredibly powerful, which led to many players feeling that the weapon was overpowered, upsetting the balance of the game. Over time, rumors grew that Bungie co-founder Jason Jones had increased the gun's power just before the game shipped, and in a 2013 interview, Jones finally admitted and acknowledged that he had done just that. According to Jones, many developers felt that the pistol wasn't quite at the level it needed to be, but with the game so close to release, no one was very willing to mess with the code. That is, no one except Jones, who eventually decided to adjust the code for the pistol, which led to it becoming one of the best weapons in the entire Halo series. In Braid you play as Tim, a little guy with time reversal abilities, to find a missing princess. But although the game plays like a fairly simple platformer, the story and themes hint at a much larger and unusual tale, one that can only be understood after collecting 7 stars hidden throughout the game's 5 worlds. After collecting all 7 stars, which are hard to get without the help of a guide, everything stays the same until you reach the end of the game. Usually, the end of the game shows you helping the princess escape a bad guy, but then it turns out that you are watching the situation in reverse and she is actually trying to escape you, because it turns out that you are not very nice guy. However, once you have the hidden stars, the level subtly changes so that you can actually catch up with the princess and touch her. But when she does, she blinks rapidly until you hear the sound of a nuclear explosion. Apparently, the entirety of Braid is supposed to be a metaphor for the creation of the atomic bomb and how its creators wished they could go back in time to undo all the damage it caused. Of course, that's so far from this colorful run-and-jump game that it really proves how far out there some of these conspiracy nuts are. The game even includes a quote from Kenneth Bainbridge, the director of the Trinity atomic bomb tests. Bethesda's Fallout 3 was a wonderful post-apocalyptic role-playing game, but was it capable of telling the future? During the game, players received radio signals in the wasteland of the former Washington, D.C. The radio's function is to broadcast old pop songs, update missions, and generally work to build a more complete game world. The device also predicts the future. Occasionally, a series of numbers that sound like Morse code will be sent through your pet boy. The story goes that the code predicted the Deepwater Horizon oil rig disaster down to the day and hour. Pokémon is a title that seems to be steeped in historical conspiracies. Pokémon Red and Blue was a huge success for Nintendo, but between training your Charizard, did anyone bother to ask where the hell the adults are in this game? As Ash, you travel through Kanto with deadly, barely controllable wild animals thrust into questionable living conditions. The larger question of where all the male adults have disappeared to lend credence to the theory that Pokémon actually takes place at the end of a major global war. This has forced several changes in the world of Pokémon society. One of the biggest clues to this theory is that both Ash and his rival Gary do not have a male parent figure throughout the game. The trainers who send their winnings home are all children or very young. Policemen and nurses are all female, and all the men you encounter are criminal-minded Team Rocket. Another big clue is the Vermilion City gym leader, Lieutenant Surge, a clearly damaged veteran. To add legitimacy to this theory, just before the fight against Surge says, "You won't live long in battle and my electric Pokémon saved me during the war," alluding to both a past conflict and possibly a current war. Ashes can be forced to participate. In September 1983, about 10 million unwanted Atari game cartridges turned up at the Alamogordo landfill in New Mexico. The reason for the video game's mass grave? It's a historical record that Atari's profits were abysmal in the fourth quarter of 1982. Atari had relied on two massive blockbusters to get them out of the red, a home version of Pac-Man and the infamous CT adaptation. 5 million copies of each title were returned to Atari by disgruntled fans. And what else to do with 10 million unwanted game cartridges? Have the cartridges crushed by a steamroller and fix the whole thing with concrete. Since it was revealed that Birdo is a transsexual, people have been scouring the Super Mario games to find other shocking details and hidden conspiracies. In Luigi's Mansion for GameCube, for example, there is an urban legend: if you go into a certain room, stand in a certain spot and wait for lightning to strike, you can see a shadow hanging from the ceiling. It looks like Luigi just committed suicide. Although there is some debate about what the shadow actually is, some claim it's a glitch, while others say that the game was originally meant to be much more macabre and this is just one of the many remnants left over from an earlier version. The simplest explanation is that Luigi was a ghost from the start and never realizes it. While some would say that this really and actually means nothing, Luigi's Mansion becomes a much creepier experience if you accept this myth at face value. The Grand Theft Auto series is famous for many things, but we focus on the gigantic open world full of life, details and especially hidden content. And in the standalone expansion of San Andreas, the most popular rumor was the presence of the hairy giant Bigfoot. The claim was that you could find the big guy by wandering through the game's forested mountain areas at night, which is much harder than you'd think because those sections of the game were gigantic. Dedicated players spent hours searching the forest for the mythical Sasquatch, but eventually had to declare the whole thing a hoax. Just like in real life. Finally, one of the developers stepped forward and admitted that Bigfoot could not be found in the game. Fortunately, Grand Theft Auto: Vice City is packed with references to the movie Scarface. The Vercetti estate is loosely based on Tony Montana's mansion. The Malibu Club is very reminiscent of the Babylon Club, and some of the outfits you can purchase in the game resemble suits worn by characters in the movie. As players notice more and more similarities, the rumor spread that you could find the apartment where Tony's friend meets a gruesome end via chainsaw, but for a long time no one could figure out where to find this alleged Easter egg. However, players' persistence prevailed and it eventually turned out that if you go to Ocean Beach and go to apartment 3C, you can enter the building where there is a bloody bathroom and a chainsaw that you can add to your weapon inventory. The apartment has no bearing on the story or any of the missions, it's just another nice Scarface tribute.